Hey everyone, thanks for giving me a few moments of your time. Each year at First Methodist, we set aside a few weeks to talk about the Christian practice of generosity. Now, before I talk about a few technical things related to this year's campaign, I want to talk about something even more important, and that's the why of generosity. So some of you will know the name Osceola McCarty. Osceola was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi in 1908, and she died in 1999. In the 6th grade, she quit school so that she could take care of a sick aunt, and she never resumed her education. Instead, she worked as a washerwoman in Hattiesburg, Mississippi for 50 years, so she made a living by taking in other people's laundry. Now, from an early age, Osceola's mom taught her the importance of saving money. And she also lived a very frugal life, never even owning a car. So over time, she built up quite a nest egg. Now, when the time came to make her decision about what to do with her money, Osceola decided to do this. She would give 10% to her church, 10% to 3 different relatives, and then give the remaining 60% to the University of Southern Mississippi to establish a scholarship for African American students in financial need. That 60% totaled $150,000. Now, although she asked for no recognition for her gift, when people heard about her selfless act, she became an instant celebrity. In 1996, she carried the Olympic torch across a part of Mississippi. I think that's really cool. And that same year, she was also invited to push the button to drop the ball in Times Square in New York City on New Year's Eve. And during that trip to New York, that was her first time ever on an airplane and her first time ever to stay in a hotel. But while she was there, she also received an Essence Award, and Patti LaBelle sang a tribute to her during a ceremony at Madison Square Garden. One of the really cool things about this story is after hearing about her gift, Ted Turner of CNN fame gave away $1 billion. And this is what he said. He said, "If that little woman can give away everything she has, then I can give away $1 billion." President Bill Clinton also presented Osceola McCarty with the Presidential Citizens Award at the White House, which is the second highest award a civilian can receive. And in 2020, the University of Southern Mississippi Foundation honored her legacy by unveiling a sculpture of her on its campus. So here's the question I want us to think about. Why did Osceola McCarty's gift touch so many people's hearts? Why does it touch my heart? I love this story. I hope you love it too. Why do people perceive her act of generosity as so good and so right that she became worthy of all these accolades and all this celebration? You know, we just went through the season of Christmas, and I love to give gifts. Why does it feel good to us to give gifts to people? Why does it feel good for us as Christians when we're able to provide food for the hungry, or drink for the thirsty, or clothing for the naked? Now, for me, the answer to all of this is pretty simple. See, you and I were created to be generous, and something deep within us knows it. See, God is a generous God. Just look at the creation. Look at all of the blessings that God pours upon us. Look at the earth, air, water, the food that we eat. Everything we have comes as a gift from God. As James 1:17 says, every good and perfect gift comes from above. So when you and I are generous, we are being like God. When you and I are generous, we're being who God created us to be. And when we see other people being generous, it just, something inside of us rejoices. And when you and I are generous, something inside of us, I think, says, yes, do more of that. So several years ago, we shifted away from talking about the church's need to receive, funding the church's budget, paying the bills, and we shifted to talking about the giver's need to give. We shifted away from talking about generosity as fundraising and shifted to talking about generosity as a spiritual act, as an act of discipleship that leads us to life. See, generosity is not something that God wants from us. It's something that God wants for us. And that's the why of generosity. That's why generosity matters. It's why this conversation is so important. Now, it's my prayer that each one of us will approach this conversation with that kind of an attitude and with that kind of a heart. Now, here are a few of the technical things we're going to ask you to do this year. First of all, we want to ask you to begin to pray about where you are in the practice of generosity and where you think God might be calling you to be. To help in your prayer and discernment, we've made a little devotional book available. It's called A Generous Life. And if you need a copy, feel free to reach out to Katie Davis at kdavis@firstmethodist.org. Starting January the 22nd, our theme is going to be Immeasurably More Than We Imagine. And each week, I'm going to give a message that talks about the incredible gift of Jesus and the gospel and how you and I are called to live in gracious response to that gift. We're going to hear testimonials about the practice of generosity and how it's impacted the lives of individuals in our congregation. And we're going to hear about how your practice of generosity blesses people through our church in the community. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss worship during this important time. Another thing we're going to talk about this year is something known as the giving path. And this path is made up of 5 steps. There's a first-time giver, an intentional giver, a growing giver, a tither, and an extravagant giver. And we'll talk about what these mean in the coming weeks. But each of us is going to be asked to assess where we are on this path and to prayerfully consider taking the next step in our giving journey. Finally, on February 12th, we're going to be asked to complete an estimate of giving card in worship. And as we have in previous years, these cards will be given out in worship, filled out, and turned in worship as an act of worship. And we'll be sure to provide an online option for those of you who are worshiping with us off-site. So I look forward to taking this journey with you. And I ask you to remember that God created you to be generous. By being generous, you are being like God. Generosity is a spiritual act, an act of discipleship that leads us to life. Generosity is not something that God wants from you. It's something that God wants for you. Thanks again for listening in, everyone. God bless you.